The desert of the Hijaz had witnessed countless caravans, skirmishes, and tribal feuds long before Islam. But in the second year after the Hijrah, the land itself seemed to wait. The winds carried more than sand, they carried uncertainty. Medina was no longer the fragile refuge it had been months earlier. The Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, had united its tribes, established treaties, and disciplined its people spiritually and socially. Yet beyond its palm groves, danger gathered. Quraysh of Makkah, wounded in pride and threatened in wealth, watched carefully. Ibn Kathir records that after the Hijrah, the Arabs began to say, "Muhammad has become protected." That realization changed everything. Quraysh's power had never rested on armies or fertile land. It rested on trade. Their caravans to Syria were the arteries through which their wealth flowed, and no caravan was more valuable than the one returning in the early months of the second year after Hijrah. Leading it was Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, a man known for caution and calculation. He did not travel blindly. As his caravan approached the Hijaz, he questioned travelers, examined the ground for footprints, and adjusted his route repeatedly. Ibn Hisham narrates that his concern was not imaginary. Muslim patrols were active, and Quraysh knew it. When Abu Sufyan became convinced that the caravan was at risk, he acted swiftly. He sent Dumdam ibn Amr racing toward Makkah with an emergency call, a signal meant to stir the entire city. Dumdam entered Makkah in a state meant to alarm. His camel's nose was cut, his clothes torn, and his voice echoed through the streets with a single message: "Your wealth is in danger." The reaction was immediate and divided. Some Qurayshi leaders suggested restraint. The caravan could be protected without war. After all, it had not yet been attacked. But Abu Jahl, intoxicated by power and reputation, refused caution. Ibn Ishaq records that he insisted on marching openly, making their strength known to all the tribes of Arabia. This was not about protecting wealth alone. It was about crushing the image of Islam before it grew further. Wine was prepared. Singers were brought. Poets were told to ready verses celebrating victory that had not yet come. Ibn Kathir notes that arrogance preceded them like a shadow. Quraysh set out, 1,000 strong, convinced that intimidation alone would end the matter. News of the caravan reached Medina as well. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, did not summon an army. He announced the situation plainly and left the decision open. Ibn Sa'd narrates that there was no obligation placed upon anyone. Only a small group responded, just over 300 believers. They were not soldiers. Many had no armor. Some had no weapons beyond a sword or spear. Only 2 horses were among them. Even the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, shared a camel, walking while others rode in turns. This detail, preserved by Ibn Ishaq, speaks volumes. Leadership in Islam was never distant from hardship. As the Muslims set out, new intelligence arrived. Quraysh was no longer sending guards. They were sending an army. The caravan had escaped. War now stood before them. The Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, halted the march. He gathered the believers, not to command, but to consult. This moment would define the Ummah. Abu Bakr spoke, affirming loyalty. Umar spoke, affirming resolve. Then al-Miqdad ibn Amr rose and declared words that Ibn Ishaq records with care. He promised that the believers would not abandon their messenger, unlike the people of Musa who hesitated at the edge of obedience. Still, the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, waited. He was waiting for the Ansar. Their pledge at Aqaba had been to protect him within Medina. This was beyond its borders. Silence hung in the air until Sa'd ibn Mu'adh stood. Speaking for the Ansar, he pledged unconditional loyalty, declaring that if the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, commanded them to advance into danger, they would follow. Ibn Kathir writes that the Prophet's face shone at that moment, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. The Ummah had chosen. The Muslims continued their journey. Hunger was constant. The desert was unforgiving. Yet the atmosphere among them was calm. Ibn Sa'd records no panic, no rebellion, no regret. This was not the march of conquest. It was the march of trust. Meanwhile, Quraysh advanced with music, pride, and certainty in numbers. Ibn Kathir contrasts the two groups starkly. One walked with humility, the other with arrogance. As the Muslims reached the valley near Badr, the Prophet, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, spent the night in prayer. His supplication was not theatrical. It was desperate in responsibility. He pleaded with Allah, asking that if this small group were destroyed, the message itself would be endangered. Allah answered in ways both spiritual and physical. Sleep descended upon the believers, easing their hearts. Rain fell, firming the ground beneath their feet, while turning Quraysh's side muddy. These events are explained directly in Surah al-Anfal, as Ibn Kathir notes in his tafsir. When morning broke, two forces faced one another, unequal in number, unequal in intention. This valley would be remembered forever, not for its geography, but for what it revealed. The Quran would later call it Yawm al-Furqan, the day of criterion. And history stood still. What began as a caravan had become a confrontation. What began as migration had become establishment. Badr was no longer avoidable. In the next episode, swords will finally be raised, but the real battle had already been decided in hearts long before steel met steel.